if you saw the intro, you know what we are talking about now, and that is consequence to the post I had in Facebook and request for this project. So read the parts list. If you missed it at this point, then we will recap at the very end. First item on the list is the need of a reusable mold. And these are latex blocks that are used for casting. You heat them in hot water or with a hairdryer or heat gun to make them soft and malleable. And you can leave an impression just like this. Same thing that I used on the last project, but we will now use it for the emblem on Batman. You're going to need two castings, the top of the emblem and the bottom of the emblem. So we're going to prepare our UV resin in a tray and mix in the yellow tint so it is nice and thoroughly mixed in. No air bubbles allowed. Now for video purposes, I've already done this ahead of time. Now you do see the chest with the emblem at the top right. You take that latex block after it's malleable and wrap it around the emblem on the top of the chest. And then you take the emblem out and then you make a casting and mold of the bottom of the emblem. Now to remove that emblem, you do have to heat it with a hairdryer or hot water, and then a flat tip screwdriver to pry it out of its location. It's very simple to do. This one in particular had very little glue holding it in. Now once you've got your molds, then you're going to fill them with the UV resin that has been tinted to the edge. You don't want to overfill because there will be lots of cleanup to do once it's ready to be pulled out. So you do that for both of the molds. Now since the top of the emblem is curved around the chest, you will have to fill in the cavity in the mold and tip it to one side, left or right, and then fill that edge. Then use your UV light, cure it, and then do the process on the opposite side to even out the thickness, and that way it is equally filled on both areas. And then of course you can do the center, but remember, do not go over the edge of the mold, otherwise there's a lot of cleanup to do. thicker the UV resin is, the longer it will take to cure with the UV light. So work in thinner layers to be able to cure it all the way through, and that way you don't have any soft spots when you pull it out. And at the same time, you make sure you have all the little crevices filled so that when you pull that out of the mold, you won't have a rejected piece and have to start over. Now, if you do not mix enough of the resin with the tint, then just go back and mix some more. And as you can see here, it's best to use a nice clean tray so that you don't have any particles going into your UV resin. The little clip that you saw at the very beginning, that's actually from a different project that I had a close-up on. But I'm letting this video run in real time here so you can see exactly how long it takes to make this mold. It doesn't take a long time, but it does still require patience. Once your UV resin is fully cured, you're ready to pull it out of its mold. And this is how it looks. Now, you can go translucent with thinner of the dye, or you can be as thick as this. It's opaque, really, but it still transmits light really, really well. This is the Emblem itself, and you can see how much detail you can pull out of these molds. It's hard to see it here on camera, but if you hold that up to your eye at the right angle, you'll see all of the details in the casting. And at this point, it is time to make a test fit and make sure that is the exact size. And of course it is. It's a direct mold of it. So it's now time to clean up the edges on the casting on both of them so we can put them together. And we're going to be using the same UV resin to cure them together. Now, before we put them together, we want to make sure that there are no soft spots anywhere. So the best way to clean up the edges is with these cutters. so you have a nice clean edge. With a knife it's a little tricky because you can have a jagged edge or cut too far. So the best thing to do is use cutters like this, get as close as you can, and then use a file to take down the rest of the edge. So I'm glad you stuck around and made it to this point, because now you can see the board that is going to be doing all the work on the flickering. And this is the flicker board from Brixmax. You can pick it up in Amazon.com. Now the LEDs that we need are 2 yellows. Why yellow? Because we want to enhance and increase the color of the yellow resin. You can use white, but it can go pale on you on the color. Or you can use orange and totally change it. I prefer the yellow. The mini LED and this board will do the trick for us. Now it is a USB connection that I'm going to use. I will use battery, just do some testing, but the USB connection is going to give you endless hours of play. You can go with this battery source here, but again, it's only going to give you about 30 hours and then you have to replace it. And it's just not as feasible. And of course, that little on switch, it's really not going to fit with those 3 batteries on this body. So it's time to drill out some holes. You can use your Dremel or a standard drill. But what you do need for sure is a 1/8 drill bit. Holes you're going to drill are going to go all the way through into the chest cavity. Feed the LEDs through and bend at an angle the diode so that it will sit flush on the surface just underneath the emblem you're going to place on top. Now, using the same UV resin that you have as an extra or the residue in the container, use that same UV resin to tack down the LEDs in place. So it doesn't take very much, just a little bit on the edges, and then hit that with the UV light to cure it. Now with that same UV resin, you can put together the 2 pieces top and bottom. And for video purposes, I've already done so. There's no real science to it. You just put them together and hit it with that UV light. I've painted mine ahead of time as well. It's up to you if you want to use the same colors as the actual figure or change it out entirely. But once that is all cleaned up, then you can hit it with the sealant, and here you go. So to step forward, we are now going to run a test to make sure that our wires are functioning, our board is still going to work, and how it's going to look before we actually attach it to the body. So we're going to hook up our circuit board to our LEDs and to our power source. Right now I'm just using these little button cells. It's only to make this test. These are not going to be inside the body. There's actually no room in it. This is what your actual project should look like at this point. Now it is here that you can decide to either use glue to glue the new emblem or UV resin. Either way, you can go with Fabri-Tac or E6000, whatever glue you want, even super glue. But we want to get one side in and fit it properly. If there's any edge that is off or not making full contact, you can later reheat that after you have one edge set up and then bend it into shape so that it hits the other surface flush. And then you can use the UV resin or whatever other glue you are using to then fully cure it. Because I am using the UV resin, it will set that much quicker and the project will finish that much quicker. If you're using glue, you're gonna have to wait for it to fully cure. If you're using super glue with the activator, then it's gonna set much quicker. Now, the nice thing about the UV resin is because it is clear, and in this case the same color, I am able to go back in and fill any gaps that may be showing, and then clean up the edge, and then hit it again with the UV light to seal those gaps. That's going to be tough to do with the glue in any case, even if it dries clear. So keep that in mind. So now it's time to clean up the wires that we fed through. And all you really got to do is coil them up. These are 15 centimeters long and they should be able to coil up in maybe 2 or 3 loops. And you don't want any excess wire hanging out the edge. That's why you want to make sure that they're cleaned up like this. So once you have them coiled, you can now reattach them to the flicker board and the power source. In my case, again, I will be using a USB, so then I can actually have that connected later into my computer or whatever other source I'm using, and it just provides countless hours of entertainment. Now, before you inset the flicker board, it is best to cut out a notch on the back end of the body, toward the back, literally, inside that cavity, and cut it out square so that the board fits snug, not tight, otherwise you're going to kink the wire from the power source. Now once everything is hooked up and in place now, you can do a final test. You should have very vibrant color that is flickering off of that emblem. Once again, here's a quick review of the parts list for this project. I will now leave you with some video, and of course, if there's any questions or comments, please let me know. And make sure you share the video or give it a like. And of course, don't forget to subscribe. In the meantime, Keep customizing those figures.